Hey everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from March 17th, 2023, and I'm recording this on September 15th, 2023. As always, I give you those dates so you know when this information is actually most relevant because the market is always moving and changing, as you will see by the prices from just 6 months ago to the prices now. Also, as always, we're looking at... well, not quite as always. We're looking at this, the Comic Tom Key Collector hottest trending comics of the week, their list of 10. But CBSI did not put out a list of 10 this week. I forget now what the reason was, but there was a specific reason why the writer couldn't do it this particular week back in the spring. I don't remember what it was now. I didn't write it down, but he couldn't do it, so they didn't have a list that week. So we only have 10 books to talk about this week, so this should be a relatively quick video, but I think we can still learn something. So let's dig in and see what we can learn from those 10 books that were on the Key Collector Comic Tom hottest trending comics of the week. First up, we have Amazing Spider-Man number 298, the cameo appearance of Venom. This was hitting the list because David Michelini was doing a CGC signing, or at least that was Tom and Key Collector's justification for saying this was hitting the list back then. Raw copies were going for $100 on average, according to them. 9.8 was hitting $750. Now it's a $30 to $120 book, raw side. But 9.8s are down $4 to $575. So while the raw side, you could say, are steady, maybe I'll be back, maybe down, I'll be back. The 9.8s are definitely down and definitely a trap compared to what they were just 6 months ago, with, you know, a $200+ drop on a 9.8. Yeah, that's a big drop for this particular book since just 6 months ago. Next, we have a couple of option books, and first up of those was Cadet U, number one, released back in 2017. It's been on the list multiple times. We've talked about it because it had been optioned by Netflix for a while. And we got more news that it was coming. I forget now exactly what was prompted at this time, if it was a trailer or if it was just an announcement when it was going to be released. I forget now. But back then, it caused this book to jump back up to a $20 book. 9.8 is going for $75. The show just recently released, like just a few weeks ago. And so right now, the book is actually up and worth it compared to what it was 6 months ago. $20 to $35 for a raw copy. 9.8, $80 to $100. So up and worth it, just slightly. You could just slightly up from what it was. Now, my guess is if we come back 6 months from now, that will no longer be the case. But for now, at least, with the show just recently dropping on Netflix, it is up and worth it for this particular book. Next, we have Berserker number one. This book hit the list because we finally got issue 12, the final issue of the series, after basically 2 years of waiting for it. And we knew there's supposedly an animated series still in the works. There's supposedly live action movies still in the work. But this thing had a massive print run. People were all over it from the beginning. So even with it hitting the list, raw copies of the A cover were only going for $6. 9.8 was only hitting $75. I said worth it on this because of the raw copies, and they're still $5 to $10 basically, right what they were. So you could argue definitely worth it for that. 9.8 though, $40 to $50. So this is one of that first one that met Cadet U. You know, it was up a little bit. This I'm going to call steady. I'll be back because most of the copies are raw, but definitely a backup on the 9.8 side. You could actually argue the 9.8 side should be a trap, but overall, we're just going to go steady. I'll be back with this particular one, as you would have definitely been fine just waiting and getting a better deal. All right, next we have Blue Book number 2. This James Tynion, the fourth project. This is a promo cover that came out. It was given away at a specific event. I didn't write down what that event was, basically. So only if you were at that event could you get it. So it's super limited promo of this book, which caused raw copies of this thing to jump up to $115, went to $170 is what they were selling for on the secondary market. Now, only one recent sale of this particular cover, and that was a 9.8 signature series, and it only went for $100, less than what raw copies were going for right after the release of this book. That's not a good sign. probably should call this a dumpster fire, but I'm only going to call it a trap because there's just one sale, and it's hard to really judge anything off that. But a 9.8 going for less than raw copy, 9.8 signed going for less than raw copies, not a good sign for the value of this particular book. All right, next we have another Comic Buzz book, and that is Image 30th Anniversary Anthology, number 8, which is kind of an odd book to hit the list, but this was hitting the list because it had a preview of the World Tree series in it. And basically, World Tree had a lot of buzz long before it came out. People were like anticipating this. It was going to be, hoping it was going to be a hit. That was what was going on here. So people were jumping on this preview. Back then, raw copies were going for $12, 9.8 up to $80. Now it's a $5 to $20 book, 9.8, $40 to $80. So a down and I'll be back. I do think there's still some buzz around World Tree, but I do think it's calmed a little bit. We'll see. I haven't heard a lot of people really talk about how good the story is. But we'll see. We'll see if this book ever lives up to the hype that it had pre, but I kind of have my doubts. It doesn't seem like it is. All right, next we're going to move into a little DC movie stuff, and this is Detective Comics number 469, the first appearance of Dr. Phosphorus, who was going to be part of the Creature Commandos team for the animated series and the movie, or at least that was the rumor back then that was caused this book to hit the list. Raw copies were going for an average of $40. 9.2 hit 150. Now it's a $10 to $80 book for a raw copy, so that's probably pretty close to the range. If you said the average is 40, that's probably about the same. 9.2, 165 is the most recent sale there. Also up a little bit, but about the same. So we're going to call this steady and worth it overall. Seems to be covering in the same range as it was before. Maybe up a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see how soon we get any of these James Gunn DC projects, given that everybody's on strike right now. So it may be a long time that we have to wait for the James Gunn DC universe. All right, next we have Star Wars number 42, the first appearance of Boba Fett. Back then this was hitting the list because Mando Season 3 was coming out, even though he didn't appear in it. Don't know what was going on there, but really why it was necessarily hitting the list. Or maybe it was just a bounce back, because this book crashed after the Boba Fett series came out. Just plummeted in value. Now, at this point, it was bouncing back to $100 to $300 book raw. 9.8, $15.45. Now it's a $50 to $300 book raw. So I'm going to say that's the same, with just the low end being a little lower for rough copies. But 9.8, $18 to $2,500. So they've actually bounced back even further. Still not the peaks they once were at, but they've continued to climb back up some. So we're going to call this up a straight cash. This book is actually climbing back up the ladder to where it once was. We'll see how high it actually gets before it levels off again. And maybe it already is. But definitely this book has bounced back from the post Boba Fett show plummet that occurred. And it was a plummet. All right. 3 books left. Next up, we have Star Wars Dr. Aphra, number 19, and this was related to Season 3 of The Mandalorian. This is a Sprouse 50th anniversary variant, and the first cover appearance of Bo-Katan on a comic. Yeah, back then, raw copies were going for $4, 9.8 going for $80. Not sure that this is one of those, like, was this really even hot? As you think about it with Tom, but there was a big spike in sales, so that's why they put it on the list. Now it's a $5 to $15 book raw, which, yeah, it's up maybe a little bit, but that's probably about what it was even back then. But 9.8, $30 to $70. So those are definitely down and I'll be back. And there was a bunch of 9.8 sales. So we're going to call it a down and I'll be back based on those 9.8s. There were a lot of raw sales too, but I have a hard time believing it was a $4 book. It was probably $4 plus shipping, and now it's $5 plus shipping. It's, it's in that same range on the raw side, but definitely down on the 9.8 side. All right, next we have Punisher number 218, the first Frank Castle as War Machine. So this was hitting the list because there's rumors that he's going to be a part of, well, I think it's more than rumors that he's going to be a part of Daredevil Born Again, but there was also rumors that maybe he was going to be in the armor. Back then, raw copies were going for $50, 9.8 going for $175. Now it's a $15 to $35 book, 9.8, 1 to 135. So that's down in a trap on both sides, both the raw and the 9.8 side, as this book has definitely bounced back down, given as we moved away from this. And who knows when we're going to get Daredevil Born Again, because like everything else, it's currently on hold. And then lastly, we get Punisher #1 from 1987, the first ongoing Punisher series. Same thing, rumors he was going to be in the Daredevil show, that kind of stuff. Back then, raw copies were going for $40, 9.8 going for $300. Now it's a $15 to $40 book, 9.8, $250 to $300. So another down, and then I'll be back here with another Punisher book. I enjoyed his performance on the Netflix show. We'll see how well Marvel does at bringing the best parts of that Netflix show back, given it's going to be on Disney Plus. Probably won't be as dark, but we'll see if they can make it work, particularly with the Punisher. With that, we're going to wrap up this week's list. Like I said, only 10 books this week because there was no CBSI list. I want to thank you guys for watching, and we will catch you next time.